Silence was the first sound I heard after the door slammed behind me. Not the sharp crack of wood meeting wood. Not the muffled shouting still echoing behind it. Just silence. Heavy, stretching across the porch, down the driveway, out into the night. It wrapped around me like a vacuum, pressing in on my ears, muting even the crickets. I stood there for a few seconds, one hand still clenched around the handle of my duffel bag, the other trembling at my side. I didn't cry. I didn't scream or bang on the door or beg to be let back in. I just stood there half expecting someone, anyone, to follow me out. Call my name. To say, "Wait, we didn't mean it like that." But no one came. The porch light flickered overhead. I didn't look back. The cool air hit my face like a slap. My heart was still pounding, echoing the last words my mother had thrown at me. Words that cracked like a whip, loud enough to make the room go silent right before I stood up. Words I'd been afraid to believe, even as she said them. "You're ungrateful. Get out. And don't come back." I stepped off the porch. Gravel crunched under my boots as I crossed the yard, my legs stiff and mechanical. I didn't have a plan. I didn't even know where I was going. But I knew I couldn't stay. The sky was wide and black above me, the stars cold and distant. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Probably someone texting to say I was being dramatic or selfish. I didn't check it. I didn't need to read more judgment in the aftermath of that ambush. How had it gone so wrong? One moment I was sitting at the table, trying to explain myself to be heard. The next, voices were raised, chairs scraped back, faces twisted in disappointment and rage. Like I had betrayed them. Like I had brought shame on the family. Like I wasn't one of them anymore. But I hadn't betrayed anyone. I had only told the truth. I gripped the strap of my bag tighter and kept walking. That night, I left behind more than a house. I left behind a name, a place, and a silence I'd never forget. I grew up in a house where love came with strings, thick, invisible ones that pulled tighter every time I stepped out of line. From the outside, we were the picture of a perfect family. Church on Sundays, matching Christmas pajamas, family photos with practiced smiles. But behind the closed door of our 3-bedroom home was a code no one explained. One you either followed or you didn't belong. I didn't belong. Even when I was little, I noticed it. My brother Daniel could do no wrong. He was the golden child, polite, obedient, quiet. When he got a B, it was, "He's trying his best." When I brought home straight A's, it was, "Don't get cocky." When he forgot chores, my parents laughed and said boys will be boys. If I did the same, I was scolded for being lazy and disrespectful. Question things. That was my first mistake. Why do I have to wear a dress to church if Daniel doesn't? Why is it disrespectful to disagree with Grandpa when he's being racist? Why do we pretend we're close when we barely talk to each other? The answers were always the same. Stern looks, cold silences, and the sharp-edged phrase that became a constant in my life. Don't embarrass the family. My mother was the master of emotional control. She didn't need to yell often. Her disappointment was worse. She had a way of looking at you like you'd personally shamed her in front of God. Her love was measured by performance. If you did what she wanted when she wanted how she wanted, she was proud. Otherwise, she withdrew. Subtle but suffocating. My father. He was quiet, distant. He let her run the show. He only stepped in when she needed backup, and even then, he kept his words few and cold. He never asked what I felt, only what I did wrong. By the time I was a teenager, I had learned to read their moods like weather patterns. I knew when the air grew thick with silence, when to avoid the kitchen, when not to speak unless spoken to. I learned to apologize before I even understood what I'd done. But still I tried. God, how I tried. I joined clubs I didn't care about to make them proud. I volunteered. I dressed the way my mother liked. I swallowed my opinions. I smiled in photos. I studied harder than anyone. I thought if I can just be perfect enough, they'll finally love me without conditions. The truth is, I think I knew it would never be enough. But a child doesn't stop trying to earn love just because it hurts. The first real break came when I applied to colleges. They wanted me to stay home, go to the local community college, help around the house, maybe work for one of my dad's friends. It was practical, they said. Smart. But I wanted more. I'd gotten into a university across the state. Real school. Full scholarship. I came home shaking with excitement, clutching the acceptance letter like it was a ticket to freedom. But my mother barely looked up from her tea. And who's going to pay for your car? Your phone. You think we're made of money? They made me feel guilty for dreaming, like ambition was rebellion. Like wanting more meant I didn't love them. I took the scholarship anyway. Got a campus job, took out a small loan. I left home at 18 with 2 duffel bags, no support, and a pit of guilt in my stomach. They didn't come to orientation. Didn't help me move in. My mother cried on the porch, not because I was leaving, but because I was abandoning the family. Still I called. Came home on holidays. I sent updates. Photos, good news, little stories. Most went unanswered. Occasionally my mother would reply with a one-line text. That's nice. Don't forget where you came from. I tried to believe they were proud deep down. That maybe they just didn't know how to say it. But each time I visited, I felt it more clearly. I was a stranger in my own home. The air was thicker. The silences longer. And the judgment in their eyes never left. When I landed my first job after graduation, a real one at a firm they'd never heard of, I came home thinking maybe finally they'd be proud. Instead, my father said, "Sounds unstable. You'll come crawling back soon." That was the moment something cracked. Something that had bent under pressure for years finally splintered. I didn't crawl back. I worked harder. Moved into a tiny apartment. Paid my own bills. Built a life they never cared to ask about. And then the invitation came. The family meeting. They said it was to talk things out. I should have known better. They told me it was just dinner. "Come by Sunday," Mom had said over the phone. "We haven't seen you in a while." There was something clipped in her voice, something that didn't quite match the words. But I ignored it like I always did. I wanted to believe maybe this time would be different. Maybe they just missed me. I brought a pie. When I walked into the house, everything felt staged. The table was already set. Candles. Napkins folded like we were hosting guests. My brother Daniel was there with his wife, arms crossed, jaw tight. Even Aunt Renee, who usually only came for holidays, was sitting at the far end of the table, her mouth a flat line. My stomach turned before I even sat down. Dinner was quiet at first. Too quiet. Just the sound of forks scraping against plates, the clink of glasses, the occasional forced cough. Nobody asked me about work or how I was doing. Not even a fake smile. Just a wall of silence wrapped in Sunday best. I should have left then. But I was raised to finish my plate before speaking, so I did. It started when my mother set down her fork, folded her hands, and looked directly at me. "We've been meaning to talk to you." My throat tightened. "About what?" Daniel spoke next. "About your attitude. The way you treat this family." I blinked. "Excuse me." Mom sighed. That long, theatrical sigh she always used to show disappointment. "You've changed, sweetheart. And not for the better. You're distant," Aunt Renee added, as if she had any clue about my life. "You act like you're above everyone. You didn't come home for Christmas," Daniel snapped. "You didn't even call Dad on his birthday." "I was working," I said, my voice tightening. "I sent a card. You think that's enough?" My father cut in for the first time. "A card." The words started coming faster, piling on top of one another. "You never call. You post all your little accomplishments online but can't make time for your family. You think you're too good for us now. You don't respect your roots. You've become selfish." Each sentence hit like a slap. I looked around the table. No one met my eyes. Not even Daniel's wife, who once told me in secret that she admired my independence. Not even her. My voice came out barely above a whisper. "You invited me here to ambush me." Mom didn't hesitate. "We invited you here to remind you who you are. That was when it snapped. Something inside me finally, irreversibly broke. I stood up slowly. My hands were shaking. You don't know who I am. You never have. You're ungrateful, my mother said, standing too. Her voice rose, sharp and cold. We gave you everything, food, a roof, a family. And all we've gotten back is shame and distance. My eyes stung, but I refused to cry. You gave me conditions, not love. You taught me to earn affection by being silent, by agreeing with everything, by folding myself into something you could control. Don't you dare talk to me like that, she snapped. Why not? That's what this dinner was, wasn't it? You talk, I listen. You judge, I stay quiet. Not this time. Her eyes narrowed. And then she said it. If you don't like how this family works, you can leave. In fact, her voice dropped into ice. Get out. And don't come back. For a moment the world stopped. I looked at Daniel. He looked away. Dad didn't move. Aunt Renee adjusted her wine glass like this wasn't even happening. No one spoke. No one said, wait, she didn't mean it. No one said, let's talk this through. No one stood up for me. And that's when I knew. I didn't belong here. Maybe I never had. I walked out, grabbed my bag from the hallway where I dropped it, and opened the front door without another word. The sound of it slamming behind me echoed in my ears like thunder. But it wasn't rage that followed me out. It was silence. No footsteps behind me. No apologies. No one calling my name. Just me under a dim streetlight, heart racing, years of pretending unraveling inside my chest. That was the last time I ever saw them. No birthdays. No funerals. No awkward text check-ins. Just silence. A silence I didn't choose, but one I learned to wear like armor. The first night, I slept on my friend Morgan's couch. She didn't ask questions when I showed up at her door, bag slung over my shoulder, makeup smudged from crying. She just hugged me, handed me a blanket and said, "You can stay as long as you need." I didn't even know what I needed. My ears still rang with my mother's voice. "Get out. And don't come back." I thought I'd dream it away, wake up and find a message on my phone, a voicemail. "Come home." But my phone stayed silent. And so did they. Morgan's apartment was cramped, and her roommate didn't love the arrangement. After 2 weeks of awkward small talk and passive-aggressive glances, I knew I had to move. The next few months were a blur of short-term fixes. A spare room from a classmate's cousin, then a week in my car parked outside a 24-hour diner, and finally a room in a basement shared with 2 other women I barely knew. I picked up a waitressing job during the day and cleaned offices at night. I slept maybe 4 hours a night max. My back ached. My hands were raw. The exhaustion dug deep into my bones. But nothing hurt more than the quiet. No family dinners. No one calling to check if I was okay. I'd stare at my phone sometimes, just holding it like I could will it to ring. There were nights I cried so hard into my pillow I thought I'd drown in it. Nights I wondered if maybe they were right. Maybe I was selfish, ungrateful, hard to love. Maybe the problem wasn't them. But somewhere between scrubbing toilets at 2 a.m. and serving coffee with fake smiles at 7 a.m., something began to shift. I got tired of feeling sorry. Tired of carrying shame that wasn't mine. And in that tiredness, I found fire. I started saving every tip, every overtime hour, every bonus shift. I learned how to stretch $1, how to repair my own shoes, how to say no without apology. I stopped checking my phone. Stopped hoping for closure from people who thrived on my silence. I taught myself how to write better resumes, how to sit through interviews without shrinking. I applied for internships, then temp jobs, then full-time work. One day I got a job offer at a small media firm downtown. It wasn't glamorous. The pay was barely above minimum wage. But it had benefits, a desk with my name on it, and people who saw me without judgment. I cried in the bathroom the day I signed the paperwork. Not because I was sad, because for the first time it felt like I had a future of my own. Over time things stabilized. I moved into a tiny studio apartment. My first space that was truly mine. I bought second-hand furniture, hung cheap art prints on the walls, burned candles that smelled like vanilla and something new. I took long walks just because I could. I got used to eating alone, celebrating alone, living alone. And then I stopped feeling alone. My anger no longer burned wild. It smoldered steady, sharp. Not rage but clarity. They had thrown me out, and I had survived. More than that, I had begun to live. I changed my number. Blocked them all on social media. Told mutual friends not to pass along updates. Not out of spite, out of necessity. Every time I heard their names, it reopened wounds I was still stitching shut. Cutting contact wasn't easy. Felt like severing a part of myself. But what was I holding on to? Fantasy. A version of them that never really existed. Well, I let it go. I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need their pride. Had my own. And for the first time in my life, I didn't owe anyone an explanation. It's been 5 years since that night. 5 years since the door slammed behind me. 5 years since the words "get out" and "don't come back" cracked something deep and hidden and necessary. I never went back. And I never looked back, not really. Now, I sit behind the glass wall of my office, a corner unit downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and a skyline view. My name is etched on the door in gold foil. Yo. Not of a multinational corporation, I'm not chasing headlines, but a boutique marketing agency that I built from scratch. What started with freelance design work from my laptop turned into contracts, then clients, then a team. Now we have 20 employees, and we turn down more work than we accept. Quiet success. That's how I like it. No press interviews. No family photos on social media. Just good work, kind people, and a bank account that finally breathes easy. Some mornings I still wake up with that old heaviness on my chest, the memory of being told I wasn't enough. But now I know how to push it off. Go for a run. I make espresso in my little kitchen. I water the plants in my apartment that gets more sun than the house I grew up in ever did. The scars didn't disappear. I don't pretend they did. But they've become part of me. Not my whole story but the bones beneath it. I made new friends. Not out of obligation or shared blood, but because they saw me and chose me. Morgan, of course, still checks in every week, reminding me that not all families abandon you. I met people who never flinched at my boundaries. People who knew how to listen, who didn't keep score, who never once made me feel like I had to earn their love. And yes, eventually love found me too. Slow, quiet kind. The kind that doesn't ask for sacrifice but offers softness in its place. He never asked why I don't talk about my family. He just held my hand the first time I told him, and that was enough. Sometimes I still hear my mother's voice in the back of my mind. Still feel the cold air of that night pressing against my skin. But I also hear my own voice louder now. Steadier, sure. I am not the girl who begged to be seen anymore. I am not the woman they tried to shrink. I never reached out to them. Never replied to the one letter Aunt Renee sent 2 years ago, the one filled with half apologies and not so subtle jabs. Your mother's health isn't what it used to be. She still doesn't understand why you've cut everyone off. But family is family. Funny how people only reach out when they need something. I didn't respond. But I kept the letter. Not as a keepsake, but as a reminder of the bridge I chose to burn, and the fire that freed me. I do check in sometimes, from a distance. Quiet Google searches, updates from people I once knew. I know Daniel divorced. I know Dad retired. I know my mother still goes to church every Sunday and tells people I'm off doing her thing. Like I'm a phase that passed, not a daughter she exiled. They don't know who I've become. They don't know I built something from the ashes they left me in. That I laughed for the first time in years without checking if someone was watching. That I learned how to love without fear. They don't get to know. And I'm okay with that. Because I'm not angry anymore. I'm not seeking revenge, not exactly. I don't need them to see my name in lights or beg for forgiveness. Their silence, their absence, that was their choice. But my life, that's mine. Oh, mine. And every morning I wake up and live it without them. That's the real power. The letter came in early spring. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Daniel's. Still angular, still sharp. It had no return address, just my name and office listed neatly on the envelope. For a moment, I almost didn't open it. I held it in my hand like a weight from the past, one I wasn't sure I wanted to carry again. Inside, the message was short. Mom is sick. Serious. She wants to see you. She says she's sorry. Come home before it's too late. I read it twice, then folded it in half and set it down beside my coffee. Come home. Funny how the same people who threw you out forget the sound of their own cruelty when time starts running out. Funny how home is only home when they need you again. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened a blank document and wrote the letter I'd always wanted to send. Dear Mom, you taught me pain before you taught me love. You taught me to fear my voice, then punished me for being silent. You loved me only when I was small enough to control, quiet enough to ignore, obedient enough to disappear. But I didn't disappear. I grew. I built myself from the silence you left me in. I held my own hand when yours let go. I survived the cold you wrapped around me and learned how to make fire out of my own breath. I don't hate you. But I don't miss you either. Your absence has become a piece I fought too hard for to give up now. This, my life, my healing, my strength, it's not yours to witness. You forfeited that right the night you told me to leave and never come back. So I won't. Even now, this letter isn't for you. It's for me, to say the things I never needed your permission to say. Goodbye. The daughter you lost. I never mailed it. I didn't need to. The real revenge was simple. I healed without them. And I never went back. I stood across the street from the house I once called home. It looked smaller than I remembered. The paint a little more chipped, the lawn overgrown. The porch light was on, flickering like it always had. I wondered if Mom still insisted no one fix it, calling it good enough. I hadn't planned to come. I was passing through town for work, and something pulled me here. Not nostalgia. Not guilt. Just curiosity. A silent check-in with the ghost of a girl who once begged to be seen inside those walls. I didn't knock. I didn't need to. I stood there for a few minutes, letting the memories swell and recede. The shouting. The silence. The dinner that ended it all. I remembered the way my feet had hit the pavement when I left. Hesitant, shaking. Now they were steady. No part of me wanted to step inside again. Not even to say goodbye. That chapter was written. Sealed. Buried. I turned and walked away. Not broken this time, not lost, not hoping for redemption. Chose myself. They asked for silence that night. Now they have it forever. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't rage or confrontation. It's thriving in the silence they tried to bury you in. When love becomes a weapon and family turns into a wound, walking away isn't weakness. It's war won without blood. Healing without their permission is the loudest silence they'll ever hear.